And it kind of goes back to that old saying of a great song should be able to be played with an acoustic guitar and sang with one single vocal. And so that's without all those tricks, in there. And like, and then you've got that great song, and then you add the song craftsmanship on top of it. And now you're really putting it on steroids. If the listener is maybe getting distracted, you're grabbing them,
Hmm.
every couple of seconds, you're trying to grab them back. And keep them along for the ride. Song is such a strong roadmap when it's great. Those are the easiest ones to produce. Like, they really are. One of the sayings is like, don't fuck it up, when it's that good.
Hey, it's Mike Meiers from the Songwriting for Guitar podcast. Before we jump into this episode, if you're a songwriter, guitarist, and you're looking to advance your skills, gain confidence, and monetize your craft, be sure to check out songwritingforguitar.com for all our free resources. So let's jump into this week's episode. Sean, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
There's so much I want to get into, and I'm trying to think of what's the best starting point. And I feel with your story in particular, I think longevity is something I'm really interested in hearing, like how you started, what your expectations were. And here we are. I mean, you got, 3 gold records, a career that spans multiple bands that you've worked with that are industry known. And here you are still producing records, still doing this full time. And I think
Yeah.
for some people, they go, how can I do that? What exactly,
Yeah.
step by step, where do I start? So I'd love to know what even got you into producing. What was the got you
Okay.
to start doing that route?
Well, I was a drummer in a band all throughout high school, probably like a lot of producers. And although one difference, at least from other people's stories that I've heard, is that I don't think I ever had the fantasy or aspiration to be like a rock star or anything like that. I don't even know why. It's not that I didn't love it. I just didn't think about it. We were playing in like punk bands pretty much, and I don't like at the time. I don't even think those type of bands became rock stars really. But like somewhere along the way in high school, when I got really into recordings, basically, I just got obsessed with the sound of records and wanted to figure out what that meant and how you could do that and how my bands could sound like that. So I think that's when it began, as far as I can remember. I borrowed a friend's 4 track at the time, like 4 track. This is like mid 90s. And then I think my focus gradually switched from being in a band to being interested in recording. And because I was um, recording so much and I was playing with all these bands in like a scene in Chicago, just naturally, I was kind of the guy in my mom's basement that bands would come over and we would, mess around with recording. And so it was a pretty natural um, transition from musician to like, I guess I didn't even know what a producer was. It was just making, trying to emulate records basically at the time. And that's how it began. And I eventually went back to being in a band somewhere along the way and did the touring thing and all that when I wanted a break from production. But that was later. That was like that was after I had some success, and I could kind of take a break, like financially. I would say that's where it began. Yeah.
Did it seem too an easy way to communicate because you were in a band? So when you have all these bands that are coming in, it's like you understand a little bit of band dynamic and just what's needed, because sometimes I feel that gives, when you're in a band, you have a little bit of an advantage because you know that there are certain dynamics within how everyone works and the best way to communicate with the drum guitarist.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I didn't, of course, none of it was crossed my mind at the time. Like, you're kind of in it and you're young and you're hungry just to do stuff. But looking back on it, totally. Yeah. I, it, there are definitely plenty of very successful, as far as I know, producers or mixers or engineers that probably didn't come from playing in a band. And part of that is mind-boggling to me. It's not like that it mind-boggling in a way of like they're cheating it, because the outcomes are amazing. And so they're clearly awesome at what they do, and they figured out their lane. But for me, if I hadn't come from a playing in a band, I don't know how that would have worked. I don't think it would have worked for me. I've always come at it from that standpoint. And, and now 25 years later and not really being, or definitely not being in a band, I have to sometimes put myself back in those, in that mindset to remember, like, to be sympathetic to all the things that a band is going through. And it's not just the internal dynamics, but it's that, like, you know, so we're talking about production specifically, which is like half what I do, and maybe half what I do is mixing. So when I'm producing and a band is in the studio with me, I have to remember that, that, to me, that's our entire world, but to them it's just one piece of the equation, right? So, like, and I'm reminded of that sometimes when I'm with a band and all of a sudden they're like, we got to take a phone call, our manager, or there's this whole fucking nightmare about this tour coming up, and you're like, oh yeah, you've got a tour, and like, and that's a whole other side of your world. Or it's like, our merch company's something and something, or, the video we got to do. And there's so many other facets of being in a band, like, or, we got to get this rehearsal together before this tour, and we live in different cities now because whatever. And so you're just reminded that they got a lot going on, and it's not just this. But for me, my only focus is this. And so I want them to be 100% like, committed. And maybe if I feel like they're not focused that day or that moment on the song at hand, my natural reaction might be to be frustrated. And it's like, come on, you guys, why aren't you in the game? And then I'm reminded, because you've got a ton of other crap going on, so yeah, so I think being in a band definitely taught me that. I toured, I did the whole thing. We got, record label offers and all that stuff. Um, and I saw it, but I saw the professional side of it later. I saw the grassroots side of it first. Um, and but yeah, I think it's immensely helpful. I mean,
I
you're
think what
you're
you
working with
described right
artists.
what you described right there too is how understanding that navigation, there's so many other moving pieces that they have to deal with. It's probably floating around their head, that there are just certain things that you can do sometimes to center them back to, like, in a way to just for the production to, like, oh, to get them to perform this way, purely not distancing or dissing what they're having to do, but trying to
Yeah,
navigate those ways in a way that kind of makes them go like, oh, you get it, cool, 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 and it brings them back, as opposed to, get your shit together, it's a music video, it's just
yeah,
like, yeah,
yeah,
to me that's the navigation of being a producer, is getting the product that you want, but also tapping it into a way, or an art, getting the artist to deliver the performance you want, but everybody has different or ways that they're going to
yeah,
respond and connect, and so you have to navigate, oh, with so and so I have to, presenting it this way, with so and so it's kind of this way, with them I have to, if I do this they go, oh, okay, and then they
yeah,
they give the performance. So to me, those are waters that are, it's being personable too, and just communicating. You have to have different ways of communicating what you want
yeah,
based on their
yeah. Psychology
personalities
is
and
like
how
half
they
of it.
are. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for producing a record, especially with a band or any artist really, but
Yeah.
I mostly work with like kind of self-contained bands, but yeah, psychology is probably half of it. You're navigating so many things. The internal dynamic of the oh, let me turn this off. The internal dynamic of the band, like if they're what I kind of call like a legacy band, in that, this is their, like you said, you meant, or maybe I can't remember if you mentioned it, but like, I just made a record for a band called Motion City Soundtrack, and that's their seventh, I think it's at least their seventh record. They've been around for 25 years. There's a lot of that's a 25-year relationship, with the same members. And so there's a lot of internal baggage within them. And I'm, as a singer recently put it, like, I'm this new kind of person coming into the fold. into like a marriage that's been around for 25 years. And so you have to learn to understand their internal dynamic. Yeah, there's a lot of psychology behind it, to make sure you get the right output, which ultimately, like you hit on something really important, which is to get the right performance or to execute the vision of the record. And so you are all following, ideally, um, like kind of a roadmap to get to a place. You're all trying to get to the same place. I mean, generally speaking, visions may be different, slightly or largely, but you're all on the same team. But a lot of times, you know, it's really easy to get derailed. And so your job is to keep the train on the tracks and keep it moving, keep it on budget, and make sure it sounds good and representative. And there are so many things. It's why these days I don't produce. I really tend to only produce one or two records a year, and I mix the rest of the time because it's so emotionally. There's so much of an emotional and mental and physical investment in it, that 25 years ago I could knock out a lot of those in a year, but when you get older, it's harder to sustain, for me at least, to sustain that lifestyle.
This is perfect because I want to say, like, let's go back to that workflow of like 2003, 2004, because I
Okay.
think one of the
Yeah.
albums that you're, best known for is working with Fall Out Boy. Take This to Your Grave. I mean, were the expectations in the workflow different then as it is now, or it's just how is that slowly? Was it kind of like, hey, we're just going to get a great record?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, honestly, yeah, expectations, that's a good question. Okay, so when we did that, we did it, I had known all of them. I had recorded all of them in previous bands. We had played shows together. I was
Yeah.
kind of still playing at that time, and or a little bit, I think. And all I know is that we went and did a couple of songs that were meant to be like demos, so to speak, which ended up going on the record as is, those, and became like the singles, funny enough. And we did those, and man, we were just excited about doing it. It was like I was 22 years old, I think, and Patrick, the singer, was probably 20 years old or something, 19. We were super young, and I think just the idea that we could go into a recording studio and spend a few days and try and capture something was really exciting. So you're not really thinking about expectations. You're just like, the excitement is driving it, and that it's something new. I don't think you can necessarily recreate that on a fundamental level, like, 25 years later. Like, you find different ways to recreate that, but like, that's kind of like just an energy that exists at a moment in time because you're new to it, I think. And yeah, we wanted to kind of prove something, I think, to ourselves. Like, I know I did. Like, my goal was, I wanted it to sound as good as, other records we were listening to sounded. And I'm sure they all wanted it to do really well too. But yeah, so we did those things, and we really liked the way it came out. We were happy with it, these demos. And then they shopped them around, they got a record deal, and the record company liked them enough to say, keep those, and add, like, I think it was like 7 more songs or something like that. And the mission was the same. We went back in the studio, and it was, yeah, we were just super hungry to do something that we loved, and we were driven by that. And there were no I mean, to think of the fact that it would become a gold or a platinum record, or or whatever, or it would lead to this career for this band, like, that they'd be playing, selling out arenas or whatever, like, 25 years later. That There was none of that I can recall. I mean, we were just kids in like a warehouse working on songs, and all we gave a shit about was the music and the recording. Now, like, Pete the bass player who was definitely, as far as I've known, as far as I always knew him, he was always kind of the business brains behind the operation. I think the wheels were turning in his head of what he could do with this, and I think he's done that their entire career, to the best of my knowledge, and he's very, very good at it. And I guess it's possible that he was creating expectations and plans that I just didn't know about, and maybe wisely so, just kind of said, "Hey, let's leave Sean and Patrick or whatever in the band alone and make the music, and I've got these other things going." And I honestly don't know. Now that I know him, I would be surprised if he didn't, because he's forward thinking and he's good with that stuff. It's part of the equation that makes it work in my mind.
As you were working with them and subsequently as your career has progressed, how has that process evolved for you? Or are you just made up of each experience, like each band you've worked with, each artist you've worked with? It's still you, but you just add, I don't know, if you were a house, you just added like a back patio, you added a little bit onto it. It just seems like it's still you, but you've just
Mm.
slowly expanded your view of production and just like
Yeah.
what's a great song? Like what is a great song that connects with people?
Oh, well. Yeah, I mean, those are two different things to me. I mean, a great song is something that makes you feel something, you know.
Mm,
Um, that's pretty much it. Like, that's all I care. I- If it if it if it captures if it captures my attention without me having to think about it and changes my mood, it's a great song.
that is to me right there. I just want to stay with that for a second because I think that's really interesting because people think about that constantly. They always go into intricate levels of like, oh, I need to rewrite my lyrics. But what you just described is it's like all three of those things: lyrics, melody, and the chords itself. But what it's doing to you, and as you said, like, do I have to really think about it? But can I just live into that mood or that experience?
That it's just an expression. It's a
Yeah.
like it, somebody expressing something genuine, and you're reacting to that. And it doesn't mean like somebody can express something genuine by fucking screaming at the top of their lungs, and it may not resonate with 99.9% of the people, but it may resonate with somebody at that moment in time if they hear it at the right time. And that's that could be a great song. I think great songs don't mean that the entire world love them at all. Great songs, like, it's so tricky because fundamentally, I think that that's the most important thing about a song to me, is just something that's genuine, that it's honest, it's genuine, it's heartfelt, and you're kind of putting it out on the line. And um, and if somebody else can relate to it, then great. But then clearly there's the craft of songwriting. And so you can, to me, often, not always, but like often my favorite songs are when those two marry. And so, like, easy examples of that are like most like Beatles songs, right? Or something like that. Or I mean, there's an infinite amount of them, but like, but where um where you can take a Lennon song that is clearly written from the gut or from something genuine place of expression, but also when you dissect it, you go, wait a second, there's an extra bar in there, or that's a really cool, unusual chord that you went to, and and that's a really creative way to wind that melody around that chord, or that's a really creative arrangement, or that's a creative sonic landscape for and go down the road. And that song craftsmanship to me. And like, but it has to start with the first thing. And so you could have you could craft an amazing like production or like a really interesting chords and all this stuff, but if the meaning isn't genuine, then it's kind of worthless in my mind, unfortunately. Like, because it's not, you're missing the point. The point is expression, and so that's more like indulgence, I think. And I don't know that people are wanting to, like, maybe songwriters and like us, like people like us are wanting to listen to indulgence. And we do, and like, and I do, I listen to like things that I'm just like, holy shit, like the drumming on that is amazing, but like, but you know, but the song doesn't matter. I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but like,
No, but you're saying
um
for the average consumer, it's this balance of it has to be emotional expression that we feel something. And yet, even if the listener doesn't understand the nuances, it's some of those things that are also helping enhance and trigger even more of that emotion and brings it about that goes like, oh my God, this is amazing. To a songwriter or maybe a production, we go like, ooh, it's really cool because right here he went to the 2 chord, and usually it's normal we would go to the 4, and it's like the average listener isn't caring about that, but they love how they feel.
yeah, no, that's a
Yeah.
perfect way to put it. We're using all of our tools and tricks to enhance the story, like,
Yeah.
so so obviously a great song, ultimately storytelling,
Mhm.
really, generally speaking, I think. Yeah, and you're right. And we're using all these things, and they're layering in those things to enhance those moments. And it kind of goes back to that old saying of a great song should be able to be played with an acoustic guitar and sang with one single vocal. And so that's without all those tricks, in there. And like, and then you've got that great song, and then you add the song craftsmanship on top of it, and now you're really putting it on steroids.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, if the listener is maybe getting distracted, you're grabbing them, every couple of seconds you're trying to grab them back and keep them along for the ride.
I feel that's the great thing, and yet the tricky thing of production is it's also you can either kill sometimes a great song or you can enhance the great song. That's what production should do. It should take what's already a great song and just elevate it even more. It's just like highlighting the best bits of it even more. So,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
and I know this is probably a complicated question, or it's just like there's so many nuances to the answers, but it's like, what is your approach of when you know it's a great song, and then the things that you look for in production to bring about and amplify it even more?
Well, yeah, it's funny you say that, because I find that, making sure I'm recording here.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I find that the better the song is, the less you have to think about any of that stuff. So, like, let me give you an example. Like, if somebody brings you a great song, it kind of tells you where to go, and it kind of gives you more options in a way. Like, for instance, you get to the bridge, and the bridge ends up being this really open, like, release of tension from the chorus or whatever. And it just, it like, when it's that good, it tells you, it's like, oh, it's like, it's so obvious that we should try something ambient or something like, whatever you want it to be like, but it kind of just directs you, like, and then if you throw something in there that doesn't work, it's so obvious, because it just isn't like, song is such a strong roadmap when it's great. Those are the easiest ones to produce, like, they really are. One of the sayings is like, don't fuck it up, when it's that good. And the way to not fuck it up is just to pay attention to it,
Yeah.
and not like, I guess I don't know what else to say. It's just an instinctual reaction when a song is really great. Now, on the flip side, when production becomes really hard to me is when a song isn't great. And that's when I find myself scratching my head going, like, what are we going to do? Like, and we start throwing paint at the wall a lot. It's like, how do we give this song an identity, and how do we give this verse an identity, and how do we make the chorus, like, explode, and maybe that's just because within the song it's not doing it on its own, like, or it is because it's not doing it on its own, right? And that could be because the chord changes going in the chorus are not any different, and so now you've got to deal with that, and like, and so you're not feeling a different thing, or the melody and the vocal is staying in the exact same place, or the maybe the drummer is like is just playing something that's uninspiring, or I don't know, like there's a million things, but like that's when you have to start really racking your brain and trying to inject identity into something that maybe doesn't have that much identity. And that's those are the hard times. Those are the hard ones.
That right there would be a clip that I would use, because I think that describes the issue sometimes for songwriters is they think production is going to enhance the song. But what you just said is like, it's hard to enhance it when there's no identity to begin with. Like, that's really tough. Like, you could get all the best mixing, we can EQ it perfectly, but if it doesn't make me feel anything and there are just elements that aren't working to begin with, it's a clunker. It really is. It's like
Yeah.
nobody really wants to listen
Yeah.
to it.
It may not be worth using, at that point. And like, and look, I've been in countless situations where I remember being really, really frustrated, plenty of times making records for bands where artists, where it felt like a big opportunity in that maybe they had a label behind them, and maybe they had some traction, and whatever the scenario may be. Like, and it was all right, we got a chance to do something here. And I remember then songs coming in and feeling not great. And it's like it's a really deflating feeling, because you're like, fuck, like, we have a chance to do something, and we have an audience, so to speak, like a potential platform, and these aren't great. And I remember earlier on in my career, I think I used to probably like go crazy trying to do anything I could to batter the artist or the band into coming up with better and better and better songs. Somewhere along the lines, and I should say, I don't know that it was super effective. Like, like every now and then, maybe it was a little bit effective, but like there are time and budget constraints and all that stuff. And an artist is going to write what an artist is going to write, and so to kind of tell them to come back to the table with a whole new record is probably an unrealistic request. And even if it's worth it, like even if it's like you would be better off to take a year and write a better record, and you have this one opportunity to kind of like get it out to the world. Um, but point being that I remember hearing a podcast with, I think it was Steve Lillywhite, but it totally could have been somebody else. And I remember him talking about the same problem, and he said at some point he learned in his career that you just have to let go, and you have to make the record that's in front of you, and you have to make the best record you can, and you can't control it all, and you can't control the songs, and you're better off just doing the best job, moving on, and they're not all going to work, and clearly they don't all work. And even for maybe the people with the highest like batting averages, so to speak, like a, I don't know, a Max Martin or something like that. I have no clue what his success rate is, but it's probably one of the highest. And like, but it's there are still duds, and you just don't know about them. And there are still things that just get shelved and they don't get released. And like, but I thought that was really good advice. And so I've started to learn to kind of do that. Like, when artists come in and it's not the best scenario, you just work with it and you do what you can, but you don't like basically blow it up and stop their entire. That's up to them. If you can voice your opinion and let them know, but they get to make a decision, and there's often a team behind it, and there's a record company and a tour they've planned and all this stuff. And so for the producer to go, you're not ready, now you've got all these other people going, well, we're ready, like we've booked all this stuff, like figure it out. And sometimes you just got to figure it out. And like, and then the other thing I've learned too is like in a band's career, you can have a record that isn't the best thing ever after a record that was better and sustain. And that's okay. You can get through those things. Like, it's not necessarily going to kill you. If you come out with a record out of the gate that sucks, that might be game over. But maybe not. Maybe not. But yeah, there are like, not everything is totally life and death in this situation. And yeah, you just kind of got to make the best of it.
to me, like all those things that you mentioned, there's a series of, I don't know, just mindset and also a little bit of like mature thoughts you need to have of just like, I can't control this, I can't control this, all I can do is what's in front of me right now. And yeah, it may be, you know, a record that does okay, maybe it doesn't do okay, or maybe it's just part of the process. Like it, I just have to accept those things and do the best of my
Yeah.
capability. And if you come at from that standpoint, it feels like that's a better, the outcome will be better than necessarily just being like, you know, oh, fuck, you guys need to write. Yeah, shit. It's again, like you need
Mhm.
to do this all over again. Yeah, maybe not. Maybe it will be okay, or maybe this is just a learning, you know, part of the curve, and you'll be more mindful, and next time you're going to write even better songs because this has helped you become
Yeah.
aware of like, oh shit, like now that I've done this, I now know XYZ. It's no longer a hypothetical, but it's like it happened and it's
Yeah.
now informed part of my process.
Yeah. Oh, big time. I think that that's huge. I think artists who release records that don't put forth like their best effort, and I'm not just putting it on the artist, like I'm a producer too, same. You you don't really start to accept the reality of what you've created until the feedback starts coming in and after it's too late. And then that often will either you can let it choose you could choose to let it melt you or fuel you for the next one. And if you let it fuel you, then great. Failures like failure is part of life, and failures are good in that you learn from them. Like you're only going to learn from those. And yeah, I don't know, there's no recipe. There's always exceptions to the rule. I can think of it. All just depends, and it depends on resources and all that stuff. And there are some, I don't know, I just went through a record with this one band, and I was on a mission to like make it what I had a vision for it in the very beginning and presented it to the band. Yeah, and it was a over the course of a year and a half with this band called Motion, again, the band Motion City Soundtrack, who I'd been a fan of since I was a kid. Like I had their CD, their burned CD, before I knew who they were, and I was like a fan. And so
I have a burned CD of I Am the Movie. I remember somebody gave
same,
me like a copy and they were like, dude, you got to listen to this band. I was like, okay. And I was like, remember, I was like, who produces Ed Rose? He produced the Get Up Kid. And so I'm like in that mind.
yeah,
So I love that.
yeah. I came from the exact same place with that band, and so when the opportunity arose to make a record, I kind of I went through the whole catalog and kind of presented to them a what I wanted to get out of this thing, and for better or for worse. And I kind of like started the conversation. I was very nervous because I kind of had to tell them a lot of things I didn't like about certain records they had made, and I told them all the things I loved about certain records they made, and how I wanted to basically grab onto the things I loved. And I think I started the conversation. It was a conference call saying like, this is after they had asked me to make it, and they kind of wanted to know where my head was at. And the conversation started with, I realized this may get me fired from the job before we even began, but here's what I love and here's what I don't love. And this is my vision. And then it became a, where are you at? And like, what's your vision? And so we all kind of like clamped on to, luckily they were, they had similar feelings, I think. And we're like, yeah, over our career, like certain things resonated with us and certain things didn't. And we were aligned. And so anyway, point being, in that case, like we kind of went through hell to get it where we were. There's five of them and me, so six of us. We went through hell to get six of us happy. And and that was hell. We had some resources and we had some patience, and there wasn't necessarily like a strict deadline until the end. Uh, and and so in that case, we did push through, and there were moments of throw this out, throw this out, throw this out, and we're willing to do that. But you have to know when that's appropriate and when that can be done. And then there are other instances where a band comes in and you got 3 weeks with them, and it's like, we got to make a record. We're gonna make the best of this, and let's do it. You know.
I mean, enough for people making one person happy, but to be like, I have to make, like five to get them all on board. It's like there, it's like, it's possible. And there's so many different scenarios and nuances to this that you can't just write in like a little workman's handbook of just like, here's your producer's
No.
handbook. It's their experiences, and some are going to happen, some may not happen. It's like there's no very specific path. Has it always been where you just like, I just like produce it, like this is the thing I just want to do, and it's like, it taken different forms or shapes? Have you done moments of pivoting where you go, I'm going to do less of this, I'm going to do a little bit more of this?
So for one thing, I've only ever, luckily, in 25 years, either produced or mixed records for bands, or artists. That's it. So I've never like done the diversify thing that I probably definitely should do. And for better or for worse, I began by wanting to produce, or whatever I thought production was, make records, and then you kind of learn what that is. And I became a producer because somebody called me a producer one day. They were like, "You produce a record, great." And then I did the next record, and it was like, was I the producer? And everyone goes, "I guess," and you're like, "Okay."
Cool,
you
check.
know yeah. And then, like, and look, early on I got lucky in that, Fall Out Boy happened to fall in my lap, and we were friends, we were part of a scene. I i i, I produced that record, and I very much, I shouldn't use finger quotes, like, for people who are watching. I very much did produce that record, and I am certain the band would 100% agree. And like, I took the reins, and I didn't write the record, but I absolutely produced it. And so it wasn't like I didn't know, like I was just calling myself that or whatever. Like, at that point in time, I was very hands on. But anyway, so I went through a long string of producing records. That one started to have legs, and it wasn't an overnight success like people probably think. It was like an underground success, and it was like boiling in like the Warp Tour emo scene, maybe in 2003 when it came out. um they hadn't, it was their second record that had a single that went to maybe number one or whatever the hell it was, that put them all, on the cover of
Mm-hmm.
Rolling Stone and stuff like that. And that was years and years later. But it was definitely an industry hot record, and because of that, I was getting phone calls from all these indie labels. So they were on Fueled by Ramen, which was at the time an indie label. I mean, these budgets, to give some perspective, in 2003, were like $20,000 to make a record all in. Like, and in those days, that's a nothing burger budget, because studios cost $1,000 a day. So, like, I think I probably was paid like $2,000 to make the record, and 18,000 went to the studios or whatever. But that meant nothing. I didn't care. But so I'm getting phone calls from all the similar labels, like Victory Records and Hope, or whatever, Fearless Records, and I don't know. There's a ton of them. Like, and they're sending me bands like Punchline and all that stuff, and I was doing it, and I loved it, and I didn't think twice. And then I did get burnt out after a few years of that, like, of just doing it straight, and decided to, like, kind of be in a band, and I kind of quit production for a minute, and then I went back to producing. Anyway, to answer your question, did I ever question it? I never questioned it until I wanted to be in a band, and that was not questioning it. It was more like, I'd like to just try this. I produced a record for a band called This Is Me Smiling. That is by all means like unknown, although in Chicago they were like kind of a staple band. I loved them. They were amazing, and um, they event like whatever. I joined as the drummer. They needed a drummer. and we were getting offers from record companies like Epitaph and all this stuff, and we weren't totally set on taking those deals at that time. But at that point, I wasn't thinking about production. I was thinking about my band, and then eventually that kind of ran its course, and I went back into production. Didn't think twice about it. And the super long-winded answer to your question is that only when I got older, and I started. I started mixing other people's records more often. That kind of became a thing. Like, I mean, it was always a thing. I wasn't getting asked to do it regularly. Like, I was always mixing the records I made, and here and there I would mix somebody else's record. Like Less Than Jake, like, hired me to mix their record, which was a crazy thing because I had 5 years before gone and watched them. Well, it's like a teenager or
Yeah.
whatever, and but when the record mixing started to come in, it's a different way of life and it's a different way of work. And it's a different pay. And I remember thinking, this is pretty awesome. I kind of
Yeah.
dig this. And it felt like a breath of fresh air. And so at that point, I don't know that I questioned production. I just kind of questioned the balance of production and mixing. And absolutely to this day, that is it's on the top of my mind regularly in terms of that balance, striking that balance. Like, so I don't think I would ever only want to mix. I would get too bored. And I definitely would not only want to produce because I would get too worn out. And so I need the balance. And the balance these days tends to be probably more mixing than producing. And it's a moving target, you know? But yeah, but outside of that, I don't know. I mean, I guess there were points in my career where, like everybody else, it's not like it's been all success all day long. Like that's not the way this goes, at least not for me. Like, there were times where I was close to having, like, being like foreclosed or not foreclosed on, but like, like evicted from my apartment because I couldn't pay rent, or I had to sell a piece of gear to, thankfully I've gotten out of that, and I've learned to be an adult with, by some stretch of the imagination with finances and budgeting and all that stuff, and have a safety net. But for a long time I was just being an idiot, 20-year-old, not really knowing how to navigate a career. and and it got me into trouble,
Yeah.
financial woes and lows, and I had highs, I don't know if even then I didn't question producing. I should have maybe, or I should have questioned how I was handling my career
Yeah.
or my life, but I didn't. I was too arrogant or too stupid or too young to take a step back and really look at all of it. And then, to be fair, like, a lot of that period was during, like, I started in um, basically 2000. I had my first internship in 1999. At the end of the money era of the record business. And so, like, I saw, when I first got in the studio, I saw what everyone would tell me was the record business, which was, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollar budgets, and producers make a ton of money. So I never worried about it because I was always like, I guess if I do fine, it looks like everybody's killing it in this business. And so I just never considered it. And then Fall Out Boy hit, and they caught the tail end of that, and in terms of my record and some royalties, and I kind of started seeing that, and I was like, this is all going to be fine. Like,
Yeah.
that wasn't that hard. I mean, it was hard, but it was like that came relatively quick.
Yeah.
And then I went straight through the middle of 2007, 2005 to 2010, where the music business completely bottomed out and the labels completely were bankrupt effectively. Budgets went, Major label budgets went from hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to virtually nothing. Everybody was desperate and everybody was moving to home studios and nobody knew what to do, and royalties dried up and royalties went to effectively zero. And then slowly, like, I saw that build back up, and now it's a slow build, but it's headed in the right direction. At least I've seen it head in the right direction slowly. We have Spotify, people started paying for music, and by some metric, I mean, it's not
Yeah.
like record sales, but it's better than Napster, or LimeWire, where it's zero. it does generate some back end, and it puts some money back into the music industry. And so yeah, it's not like, anyway, point is, it hasn't been one thing. It's been a fucking roller coaster. And I saw, went from seeing the crazy high end to the disaster to
Yeah.
wherever the hell it is we're going now, which is somewhere in between, you know?
You know, it's interesting because you mentioned with music, but I think when you commit to something, it is a constant roller coaster. Some of it is a financial roller coaster. Some of it is like, well, this is not how it works anymore because this changed. And now we're slowly adapting to how things work now. But that to me is when someone is just consistent with the field that they're in, you are going to experience those dips. And it
Yeah.
also informs how you react in future and how you react now because you're I guess an amalgamation of all those experiences and that flow however fucking crazy it is.
Yeah. Well, you had said early on, like, longevity, you were curious about
Yeah.
that. And like, I'm at the age now where a lot of my friends who started this with me, like, unfortunately, in the last, like, maybe 5 years, that's about the time when, if it's not really working and it's not sustainable, you see them peel off. And they have to get other jobs. And so I get asked often by people, it's probably the thing I get asked the most often, is how do you sustain it? And I can only speak from my experience. And like, unless you are effectively, like, you know A plus super producer, super mixer. My buddy Dan Nigro, who's
I
a
was going
really
to say
well
he's
known.
done I was going to bring that up, but he's doing
Yeah,
okay, which is
yeah, he's doing
crazy
great.
because
Yeah,
you
yeah.
worked with his band early on, which
Yeah, I
is just
produced
like
their first record. Yeah, yeah. But look, Dan, like, I mean, I keep in touch with Dan through social media,
yeah.
and Dan was basically working at this for, since 20 years ago, since I knew him, whether it was in his band or moving to LA and trying to songwrite with, generally speaking, no probably notable real success. And I don't know the, deep inner workings of where he was at before Olivia, but like, I would assume he was the grind. And then, an Olivia hit, and Chapel hit, and Dan is what I would call, like, um he's a super producer who is like, it's like being an NBA player. Like, there's only so many seats, like, or positions, like, in that world. And if you're not in the NBA, then it's, how do you sustain a career over 25 years? And I'm not in the NBA like Dan is, but there are definitely ways to do it. And the ways to do it that I've learned are, work hard, give a shit, about what you do, uh, try to um, try to make the best thing you can make, like, genuinely. You have to, like, because that's what's going to get you the next project. You can't phone in anything, you have to care. Like, you have to care about what you do. And if you don't, like, go to another business, because there's a million other businesses that you can kind of not care and make a lot more money. And so, like, so give a shit, care,
Yeah.
and care about moving the needle, and care about not just resting on your laurels and repeating. You have to evolve, you have to be learning, and that's one side of it. There's another side of it, which is, be cool. Like, don't be a dick. Um and eh, that goes such a long way. And because at one point, I didn't used to be that way. Like, when I was making records earlier on, I didn't care how I treated the bands. It was just the record. It was like like I'm only here to make a good record, and if you hate me by the end of this, I don't give a fuck. And that's not a good approach. It genuinely, at least I don't think that that's a good approach. And maybe a record works out well, but here's the reality: is that we're in a service business. and it's an experience. Like the band comes here when you're talking about production and mixing, it's all service. Like it's an experience, and so they're going to remember that experience probably more so than they're going to remember the outcome of the record even. And so the experience is, there are so many things to that. There's your personality and the way you get along with them in the studio and keep things light or joke around or whatever. That's a big part of it. But then there's another part of it, which is I learned at some point along the way that there's all the friction that's involved in getting from idea to execution. And my goal was eliminate all that friction. And so that meant more work for me, but better experience for the band. And so, like, an example of that would be it used to be we all show up to the studio on day one and we're going to bring in drums. I'm going to bring in my drums. You're going to bring in your drums. We're going to set up microphones. We're going to check everything. We're going to work out the problems. We're going to like tune the drums. And by 8 o'clock at night, maybe we're ready to like, maybe everything works and the drums sound good enough. And the drummer's like, I'm so fucking tired. And so, okay, so at some point I was like, this is insane. Why am I doing this to the band? Like, this is not the way this should work. And so the way it should work is they should show up and everything should be ready and we should be rolling within 30 minutes. And they should sit down at the drums and the drums should sound amazing. And so my approach is totally different now. And it's however it has to be done, however you arrange it with the studio or the assistants, and there's a million ways to do it, but you get it set up, you get there the day before, you tune things, you mic it, you get sounds, you like, I have all kinds of systems in place for not just drums, but everything. And so the drummer shows up, sits down and goes, fuck, this feels awesome. Like, these sound awesome. Let's go. And the answer is, yeah, we can go. Like, we're ready to go. And so all the way down the line, guitars, whatever it is. And it means that you have to put in the preparation and you got to be there and you got to you can't let them know you're doing that. Like, you don't want to make them feel bad that you've done
Yeah.
that. Like, you eat that burden. And when you get to a certain point, like, I'm lucky I have assistants and I can have my assistants do these things. And, but it still is work and I'm still, organizing it. But that's the experience. The experience is that, and when they grab a guitar, I've got like in my studio like 25 fucking guitars or something ridiculous, and it's like, and they're all different kinds of guitars, and I was sick of going to studios where somebody would grab a guitar and it's like totally out of tune and not set up, and so I've got a guitar tech who comes every 6 weeks and does a batch of guitars, and we're on a yearly cycle, and the humidity is controlled in here, and so no matter what guitar you grab at any moment, it's ready to go, and it's 95% in tune, if not totally in tune, and like, within reason, and that's important. Like, that is super important, And then, I don't know, one last thing I'll say is, like, my pet peeve was going into studios and you see a really cool keyboard or an amp or whatever, you plug into it and it's broken. Like, downer. Like, experience, boom. Like, they were like, that sucks. Nothing in the studio can be broken. Like, everything has to work. Everything has to be ideally plugged in and ready to go. And it's easier when you have your own studio, which I have. But I also work in other studios. And so when I do that, me and my assistant will go and we get it all ready. I don't care what it takes. And I still have made those mistakes just because sometimes that's the circumstance, and I've seen the result and it sucks. And so you gotta give them a really good experience. And so I'm giving you the buckets, the experience bucket, the whatever the other fucking bucket was I described, I can't remember anymore. But like, and that's how you sustain a career, is that like they walk away and they go, it was fun. It wasn't hard. Like, like, it's work, but like, you offload the hard work. You don't keep them around when vocals are getting comped and all that shit. Like, I have an assistant, does editing in the background. If there needs to be editing, you keep it fun, like, because they're going to remember that, and then they're going to call you and again, and like, half of my, like, there are so many people I work with where I'm on the fourth or fifth or sixth record that I work, like, routinely. Like, and so that's what keeps the calendar full. And it's not all big label things. It's a combination of stuff. If you're not on the NBA, and maybe if you're on the NBA, it's all big things. I don't know, but
What you're
I'm not in that world.
describing right there is, even though somebody may not be on the NBA, they can still have a sustainable career, but the things that are in their control is how they create the experience for the artist, the band. And they're not ego driven to be like, well, I did this for you. I made sure it was easy. They're not hanging it over their head, because that's not the
No.
important thing. They know that the bands are going to be like, this is great. They get a great fucking album. They go, oh, this was so much fun. We got to work with them again. And that's building something where it is sustainable and it's enjoyable too. And it's something that you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, I may not be XYZ, but I don't have to do that cubicle job where I'm sitting there and I'm flogging shit that I'm like, I'm not crazy about, or it's like, I could care
Yeah.
less. I had to come here and yeah, it's the world that I've created over time. And that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
And
Yep. Yeah.
that to me is, I think that's, trying to boil it down to words, I think that is what we ultimately want. It's a world that it's sustaining, it's great, and we have fun. It's not something that we sit there and we feel like, I gotta do this. It's like, yeah, plug in,
Yep.
assholes. All right, tune your own guitar. It's just like, no, I still enjoy the process, and it still makes me excited each time I sit down with someone new, that I'm like, holy crap, I can't believe this is the thing that I still get to do.
Yeah. You have to do that. Like, or at least I do. Like, because the fun part is making the music, and the fun, like, and really all you're just making it efficient. You're taking away all the pain points that you can take away, and you have to do them slowly, and in the beginning you have to be the one enduring that pain, and
Yeah.
and as you build, and as you're able to have an assistant or have whatever, like buy more gear and all that stuff, you can remove those pain points, and you get to the music, and that's the great part, and then it is something that you look forward to doing, day in and day out. Yeah, of course it's work, like, of course, like, I don't love the idea of romanticizing it, in that it's like it's all fun and games. That's bullshit. Like it, you know it's work, in that, like, we're trying to do something really good, and you have to put in the work to do it, but it's kind of fun work, because it's music, and it's artistic, and it's exploration, and it's sound, and, like, yeah, I mean, it totally beats the other job. And you can do, like, you can do great. Like, I'm lucky that, like, generally speaking, my schedule tends to be booked 6 to 12 months in advance, and it's like, it is that has not always been the case. But you do enough things right, and you can get there, and, like, and you made a really good point with, like, when you said you don't tell the artist that you don't take the credit for doing all these things. Think of it like a restaurant. Like, if you go into a restaurant and you have great service, and the waiter, like, kicks ass, and the food is great, like, how ridiculous would it be if when the bill came, the waiter was like, yeah, I I I did all these things to make sure that your meal was awesome. And, like, you'd be like, "What?" And it's like, isn't that your job, for one thing? And, like, and also, like, why are you telling this to me? And, like, and they started divulging all the secrets behind the scenes in the kitchen of why this worked out so well for you. You don't, who cares? That's
The
not the point.
chef wanted to spit in your food, and I was like, no, they are
Yeah,
amazing. I told them they
right.
were the best customers I ever had. So
Yeah. And, like,
that's
yeah, it's like, you just, like, that, I don't know, like, you don't that's not the point. Like, the point is that you walk away and you enjoyed
yeah.
your experience, and you're gonna come back, and, like, and hopefully you liked what they did,
Mhm.
and if you don't, then you don't come back, and fair enough, and, not everything is for everybody.
Oh man, Sean, this was great. I feel like we could just keep on going on to the next thing, but dude, I really appreciate just your perspective on just my initial question, just starting at the beginning, just like longevity, because feel we've delved into so many different facets that I think somebody can walk
Yeah,
around and get a better picture of the commitment piece that you talked about. And really the big thing that I love is, if I could highlight this, it's don't be a dick. Really
yeah,
be the person that people want to be around, that they want to
yeah,
connect with. because
Yeah.
that gets them into a space in which they can focus and you can focus together, which is ultimately just getting a great record, getting a great single, getting that project that you want to be done to the level
Yeah.
it can be.
Yeah. You got to be able to do that. And I get it. It's hard at times. Sometimes you want to be a dick, and sometimes pressures run high. And like, it's hard, man. Like, but it never works out in your favor or in anybody's favor. It just never does. I've never seen that where it's a winning approach. And yeah, and sometimes you really got to just step out and hold your breath, if tensions run high, because it's worth it. It's worth it to maintain it. We're in a small world. The music business is a small world ultimately, and it's totally one that it's based on reputation and character. And we don't have employers. Like we're all self-employed effectively, and so you gotta be careful, and you'll be happier for it.
Dude, I love it. Sean, I appreciate it.
Yeah, totally, my pleasure, man.
Hey, it's Mike from Songwriting for Guitar. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. And hey, don't leave. We got other cool videos you should check out too. Like some of these right here. Oh, that one right there. That's really good. You should click that. Right there. Just click it.